Bonnie, Carlos, and I go way back, college days to be precise. We met during our first year at university, all of us struggling to figure out who we were in the chaos of student life. There was something special about our friendship. The three of us just clicked. Bonnie, with her radiant smile and warm laugh, was the glue that held us together. Though back then, I didn't fully understand why I was so drawn to her. In those days, we were inseparable. We'd spend hours studying together, pulling all-nighters at the library or cramming before finals. But it wasn't all about the books. We were always up to something: board games, late-night coffee runs, or just hanging out at the campus pub, talking about everything and nothing. It was easy with them. Felt like we could face the world together, just the three of us. I remember one night specifically, Bonnie and I had stayed behind in the library after Carlos left. We were supposed to be working on an essay, but we ended up talking for hours about life, our dreams, what we wanted after university. She told me she wanted to travel the world, start her own business, live freely. I listened, completely captivated. I knew then, in that quiet moment, that I loved her, but I kept it to myself. We were friends, nothing more, and I didn't want to risk losing her over something that might not be mutual. Life went on. We all graduated and found our way, but we stayed close. Over time, Bonnie and I grew from friends into something deeper. It wasn't sudden, it was just natural. I asked her out, and eventually we became inseparable in a new way. A few years after dating, I proposed. And now she's my wife. It still feels surreal sometimes when I think about it. How lucky I am that she's mine. Carlos, he's always been a rock. There's something about him, calm, grounded, dependable. He went on to become a doctor, always driven to help people. We still see each other often. Every week, without fail, we hang out. Usually, we keep it simple: board games, a football match, some beers. The best part? Bonnie's there with me, by my side, laughing and lighting up the room. It's perfect. Bonnie's got these little habits I love. One of my favorites is how she kisses me goodbye every morning before she leaves for work. I'm usually half asleep, barely conscious, but I feel her lips on my cheek, and it's like the world shifts. My day instantly gets better. It's the first thing I think about when I wake up fully. Bonnie kissing me goodbye. It's small, but it means everything. It's like a silent promise that whatever the day brings, we're good. We're together. Then there's Sally. She's Bonnie's best friend, always popping in when we hang out. She and Carlos have been single for a while, and Bonnie's got it in her head that maybe they'd be good together. I can't say I disagree. I've seen the way Carlos looks at her sometimes, and it's not hard to imagine. He's a great guy, and Sally, well, she's smart, funny, and could use someone steady in her life. Sometimes I picture us going on double dates, Carlos and Sally, Bonnie and me. It'd be perfect, the four of us together. We've even joked about it, Bonnie and I, while watching Carlos and Sally playfully argue over something silly during one of our game nights. I never thought things would turn out any other way. We were all friends. We trusted each other. When I first changed jobs, I wasn't too worried about how it would affect things at home. I had been working as a project manager for a small firm, mostly staying local, handling day-to-day operations. It was a good job, but it wasn't enough. I felt like I needed a change, something more challenging. That's when I got the offer, a new position at a larger company handling bigger projects. The catch? It came with frequent business trips. They weren't long, usually just a few days at a time, but enough to keep me away from home more often than before. Bonnie was supportive from the start. She encouraged me to take the job, knowing it was something I wanted. I figured, what could go wrong? She's always been independent, and it wasn't like she'd be alone. Carlos, as always, was around, and Sally dropped by frequently too. They'd still watch football without me, usually when I was away. It was almost like a tradition. I didn't mind. I trusted them. Bonnie and Carlos had been friends for years, and besides, Carlos wasn't even into women like Bonnie. He always liked the tall, leggy types, women who were a little louder, a little bolder. Bonnie was a lot of things, but loud and bold weren't on that list. I call home when I was away, FaceTime with Bonnie, check in. Sometimes, when they were watching a game, they'd record their reactions when their favorite team scored a goal and send it to me. It was fun to see Bonnie and Carlos yelling at the TV like kids. It was almost like I was still there, part of the moment. I liked seeing her happy, and knowing she was with someone I trusted made it easier to be away. Of course, it helped when Sally joined them. Whenever she was around, it was like a buffer. I knew then that it wasn't just Bonnie and Carlos alone in our apartment. Sally was harmless, funny even, and in some strange way, it reassured me to know she was there. Not that I was ever the jealous type. I wasn't worried about Bonnie. She had never given me a reason to doubt her, and Carlos? He was like a brother to me. What could possibly go wrong? Sally, on the other hand, was a bit of a mess, if I'm honest. She was a nice enough girl, always fun to be around, but there wasn't much going on upstairs. A little ditzy, always getting things mixed up, but that was part of her charm. She was the complete opposite of Bonnie. Where Bonnie was sharp, thoughtful, and organized, Sally was, well, Sally. But she had a good heart. She just wanted to find someone to settle down with, and she made no secret of it. It was almost painful how desperate she was to get married. Sally had always had a soft spot for Carlos, and for a while, I thought maybe something would happen between them. I mean, why not? He's a great guy, and she was certainly eager. They went on a few dates, and it seemed like things might head somewhere. But it never did. For one reason or another, they never clicked like that. She was always trying to get close to him, hanging on his every word, flirting a little too obviously. But Carlos? He didn't seem all that interested. I think he liked the attention at first, but after a while, it became clear nothing was going to happen. There was never anything between them in that way. They'd hang out, sure, and it was all friendly, but it never went beyond that. Maybe that's why I was always so calm when Sally was around. She provided some distraction, and it made everything feel normal. Bonnie was happy with me, Carlos wasn't into her, and Sally? Well, she was just trying to figure out her life, going on random dates with guys who didn't quite fit. But she always circled back to Carlos, hoping maybe this time something would change. It never did, but I couldn't fault her for trying. I never really gave it much thought. We were just friends, and that was that. No drama, no jealousy. Just the way I liked it. It started with small changes, the kind you almost don't notice at first. Bonnie had always been beautiful to me, with her casual style, jeans, comfy sweaters, sneakers. She saved the dresses and heels for special occasions, like our date nights, which were always special to me. Our marriage was solid. We had our ups and downs, like any couple, but we always found a way to make up, to keep the spark alive. But now Bonnie was shifting. She dyed her hair blonde, a bold, bright shade that caught me off guard, and she started dressing differently, more elegant. Heels, dresses, outfits that turned heads. At first, I thought it was just a phase. People change, right? Maybe she just wanted to try something new. I wasn't bothered by it. In fact, I found it kind of exciting. I loved her casual look, but seeing her all dressed up, that was something else. She looked incredible, and nothing else in our relationship seemed to change. We still spent quality time together when we could. Sure, with my business trips, it wasn't as frequent as before, but when I was home, we'd still sit down in the evenings, have tea, and talk about our day. Felt right. One evening, before bed, Bonnie asked me to help set up her fitness bracelet. She'd started using it again, and something needed to be updated. I was happy to help. I loved these little moments. Me solving some tech problem for her watching patiently from the side. It made me feel useful, like I was contributing in some small way to her day. As I was setting it up, I accidentally clicked on the activity tab. It wasn't on purpose, but once it popped up, I couldn't help but notice something odd. Her fitness tracker showed intense activity at strange times, early mornings, late at night. Caught me off guard. I hadn't realized she was exercising so much. "You've started jogging again?" I asked her casually. Bonnie used to be into sports, running mainly, but she'd given it up after work started getting stressful. She looked at me, almost surprised by the question. "Oh no, I've been going to the gym lately." It made sense, I suppose. I was actually impressed. "That's awesome," I said, feeling inspired myself. I hadn't done any real exercise in ages, and the idea of going to the gym together felt like a great way to spend more time with her. Plus, it would do me some good to get back into shape. Maybe we could go together sometime? I suggested, feeling genuinely excited at the idea. She paused, a bit longer than I expected. I'm going with Sally. It's yoga mostly, you wouldn't like it, she said, giving me a small smile. Yoga? That was fair. I wasn't exactly into that kind of workout, and I could see why she'd want to keep it as her thing with Sally. But still, something about her tone was off. She didn't seem as enthusiastic about the idea of me joining her as I'd hoped. Felt like she was putting a wall up, and I didn't understand why. One afternoon, I ran into Sally outside the bakery, of all places. She was carrying a box of donuts and a bottle of wine, grinning from ear to ear. "Hey, Sally," I greeted her, amused by her haul. "Going all out today, huh? Thought you two were hitting the gym." She blinked at me, confused. "Gym? What gym? I haven't been to the gym in months." "Who told you I'm going to the gym?" Her words hit me like a ton of bricks. "Bonnie said you've been going together?" I replied, feeling a knot tighten in my stomach. Sally gave me a bewildered look. "Oh no, I don't do gyms." Bonnie must have meant something else. I felt cold. Something wasn't adding up. That evening, when I got home, I asked Bonnie about it, casually at first just to see how she'd respond. Sally said she doesn't go to the gym. "Did you mean someone else?" I tried to keep my tone light, but the unease was creeping in. Bonnie didn't miss a beat. "You know Sally, she probably just forgot. She can be scatterbrained sometimes," she said, brushing it off with a laugh. But it didn't feel like an honest laugh. There was something there, something I couldn't quite place. I pressed her a little, not accusingly, but I just wanted to understand what was going on. She sighed, clearly irritated. "Why would I lie to you? If you want to go to the gym with me, then fine, we'll go together." That should have been the end of it, but every time we made plans to go, something would come up. A headache, a work issue, her stomach hurting. There was always some reason why it didn't happen. Eventually, I let it go, not wanting to push her. I focused on work, convincing myself it was nothing, just a busy schedule or a phase. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. I just didn't know what it was yet. It was a subtle shift at first, something I barely noticed, but it started to gnaw at me over time. Bonnie told me she'd stopped going to the gym. The reason? She said it was too expensive, that she didn't have enough money. That threw me a little. I never denied her anything. I worked hard so she could have whatever she wanted. I took on overtime, sometimes working late into the night just to make sure we had everything we needed, and more. Our bills were paid, our savings secure. Bonnie could buy anything she wanted, and I wanted her to be happy, comfortable. But I didn't argue with her. If she didn't want to go to the gym, that was fine. "I'll just work out at home," she told me, like it was no big deal. She said she'd found some great fitness videos on YouTube, bought a mat and a couple of dumbbells, and that was all she needed. It seemed like a reasonable solution. I didn't think much of it. Then I noticed the packages. At first, it was small things, workout gear, sure, but then other stuff started showing up. Cosmetics. More than I'd ever seen her use before. Bonnie always liked to keep it simple, minimal makeup. She'd throw on some mascara, maybe a bit of blush, and that was it. But now, bright red lipstick, eyeshadow in shades I'd never seen her wear, thick eyeliner. Felt like someone else's makeup kit. It wasn't just that. There were hair bows in colors she'd never worn, false nails, and this one threw me for a loop. Fishnet tights. I hadn't seen her in anything like that, ever. She was always elegant, classy. Even when she dressed up, she kept it simple. So seeing these things pile up, one after the other, felt off. The weirdest part? I could see all her orders. We shared an account for everything, and it wasn't like she was hiding it. It was almost as if she didn't care if I knew or not. But why? It wasn't like Bonnie to wear long nails. In fact, she'd always said they got in the way, and now here she was ordering false ones. And bows? She'd never been the type to wear anything like that in her hair. I tried not to overthink it, but one night, after I saw yet another package show up, I couldn't help myself. "Hey," I said, casually, trying not to sound too concerned. "What's with all this stuff you've been ordering?" Her reaction caught me off guard. She snapped, "Why are you even asking?" she yelled. "What? I can't treat myself. I work hard too, you know?" I was stunned. Bonnie rarely raised her voice. Sure, we had arguments now and then like any couple, but this was different. It wasn't just about the things she'd bought. Something deeper was bubbling under the surface. But I didn't want to fight. I loved her too much to make a big deal out of something like this. She was going through a lot at work. At least that's what I told myself. Maybe it was just stress. Maybe this was her way of blowing off steam, of feeling better about herself. I took a deep breath, calming myself. "No, it's fine. If it makes you happy, then by all means," I said softly, trying to reassure her. "I just noticed it's not really your usual style, that's all." She huffed, crossing her arms, her face still tense. "I just wanted to try something different. Okay? Is that such a crime?" "No, of course not," I quickly replied. I didn't expect it, that's all." I could see the frustration in her eyes, but she didn't say anything more. She just turned away, as if the conversation was over. I stood there for a moment, feeling like I'd missed something important, but I didn't press her. I blamed it on the fact that she was probably going through a difficult period at work. Things had been tough there lately, and maybe this was just her way of coping. I loved Bonnie with everything I had. If she needed a little space, a few new things to make her feel better, then so be it. I wasn't going to stand in her way. If red lipstick and fishnet tights made her happy, then I was happy. At least that's what I told myself. But deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. I had planned it all out in my head. Our anniversary, our 6th, was coming up, and I wanted to make it special. Work had been keeping me away, with business trips taking up more and more of my time. But I figured, this time, I'd surprise her. Bonnie deserved that. I'd bought her a gift. A necklace she'd been eyeing for months, and of course flowers. Yeah, it was a bit cliché, but I knew she loved it. Every year, it was roses and a quiet dinner together. Something simple but meaningful. I couldn't wait to see the look on her face when I walked through the door early. When I got back home that day, I was buzzing with excitement. The door creaked as I pushed it open, expecting Bonnie to come running into my arms. But it was quiet. Too quiet. No music, no TV. Just silence. That wasn't like her. I walked down the hallway, the sound of my shoes muffled on the carpet, and I reached our bedroom door. I pushed it open, and that's when I saw them. Carlos, my best friend, sitting on the edge of our bed, his shirt unbuttoned halfway down, stroking Bonnie's leg. She was lying there, propped up on her elbows, wearing a dress that I hadn't seen in ages. One she used to wear when we'd go out on special dates. My heart felt like it was about to explode. They weren't naked, but it didn't matter. The air in the room was thick with something I couldn't explain. What the... The words escaped my lips before I could think. I was still holding the flowers, standing frozen in the doorway. Bonnie reacted instantly. "Honey," she said, her voice light, like this was no big deal. "I think I twisted my ankle. Carlos is just checking it out." I stood there, mouth open, trying to piece it all together. Her in our bed, my best friend, his shirt undone, her leg in his hands. It wasn't just the scene in front of me. It was everything. The gym lies, the changes, the strange orders. It all rushed to my head at once, crashing like a wave. 2 minutes. That's how long I stood there, in stunned silence, flowers in my hand, trying to process it all. My voice was barely a whisper, not because I didn't want to shout, but because my brain was overheating. The room seemed to spin around me. I looked down at Bonnie's bare leg, her dress hitched up, Carlos sitting just a little too close, his hands still resting on her skin. I didn't say another word. I just turned around and walked out of the bedroom, heading straight for the kitchen. I needed air, something to make sense of what I'd just seen. On the kitchen table, I saw it. 2 glasses of wine, untouched. A romantic dinner already laid out, candles, plates, the whole setup. The sight of it twisted my gut. She had planned this. Not just dinner, but all of it. Bonnie and Carlos followed me into the kitchen. Bonnie speaking first, as if on cue. "Paul, it's not what you think." Her voice was frantic now. "I knew you'd come back early, so I set up a dinner for us. I wanted to surprise you, baby. I remember our anniversary. I swear." I stared at the table, then back at her. It was the stupidest excuse I'd ever heard. "A romantic dinner?" I said, my voice barely controlled. "For us? And Carlos just happens to be here, sitting in our bed on our anniversary? What, are you kidding me?" Carlos stayed quiet, his face pale. He knew. He wasn't going to get away with this. I pointed at him, my hand shaking with rage. "And what the hell are you doing? Sitting in my bed with my wife?" Bonnie was quick to jump in again. "Paul, please, you don't understand. I hurt my leg. Remember I told you I was having pain? That's why I haven't been going to the gym. Carlos was just checking it out. He's a doctor." I cut her off, slamming my hand on the table. "Do you think I'm an idiot, Bonnie? You really expect me to believe that this is just a coincidence?" She was still talking, trying to calm me down, but my head was spinning. It didn't make sense, any of it. If I really thought about it, there were no candles in the bedroom. The bed was made, and sure, there wasn't anything that screamed affair. But then I saw it. A tiny, insignificant detail that screamed the truth at me. Her panties, draped over the chair. My eyes flicked to Bonnie. She was standing there in her dress, but no panties. And Carlos, with his shirt half undone, pretending this was all innocent. It was so blatant, it hurt. I lost it. I screamed. I didn't even know what I was yelling, just that I couldn't hold it in any longer. My best friend and my wife stared back at me, caught like deer in headlights, their faces full of guilt and fear. "I can't believe you," I shouted, my voice cracking. "You think I'm that stupid? That blind?" They stood there, silent, looking at each other as if they'd been caught in the act, but too ashamed to admit it. Bonnie's face was pale, her eyes wide with panic. Carlos couldn't even meet my gaze. I couldn't take it anymore. I dropped the flowers on the floor, turned around, and walked out of the apartment without saying another word. The hotel room was cold, impersonal. I hadn't planned on staying there for 2 days, but I needed time to think, to process what I had seen. My mind was a mess. I drank, but not excessively, just enough to numb the edges of the pain. It was the weekend, so at least I didn't have to drag myself into work and pretend like everything was fine. I spent those 2 days replaying the scene in my head over and over again. Bonnie and Carlos, our bed, that ridiculous excuse about her leg. Bonnie kept calling. My phone buzzed constantly, but I couldn't bring myself to pick it up. What could she possibly say to make this better? The trust was shattered, broken beyond repair. I had thought she loved me. I had been so sure. Now I wasn't sure of anything. By the evening of the second day, I decided it was time to go home. I wasn't ready to face her, but I couldn't hide forever. I expected to find the apartment empty, or maybe Bonnie would be there, crying, begging for my forgiveness. But when I walked through the door, she was just sitting at the kitchen table, as calm as ever. No tears, no apology. Just Bonnie, staring at her phone, as if nothing had happened. When she saw me, she didn't jump up or rush over to explain. Instead, she looked at me and then calmly turned her phone toward me, showing me a photo of her and Carlos, both of them half naked. My heart stopped. I stared at the image, my mind going blank. What was she doing? Why was she showing me this? I looked up at her, hoping for some explanation, but her expression remained disturbingly calm. "He's just better," she said, her voice cold and flat. "I didn't know how else to talk to you about it, Paul. You can't do anything in bed." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I stood there, completely silent, feeling as if the ground had been ripped out from under me. I didn't move, didn't react. I just stood there listening while she kept talking. "We were just sleeping together. That's all it is. He's better in bed, Paul. He does things you could never do. He fulfills all my fantasies." She spoke so casually, like we were discussing some trivial detail of our lives, not the destruction of our marriage. And then, as if that wasn't enough, she started to go into detail, describing the things they'd done together, The ways he had satisfied her in ways I never could. I couldn't stand it. I felt sick. How could she do this? How could she say these things, so bluntly, so cruelly, without any hint of remorse? My body moved before my brain caught up. "Pack your things and get out," I said, my voice shaking with anger and disbelief. I didn't even care where she would go. I just needed her out of my sight. Bonnie didn't react the way I expected. She didn't cry or scream or even try to argue. Instead, she stood up and walked to the sink, calmly starting to wash the dishes. It was like she hadn't even heard me. I looked around and realized they had probably had lunch together, her and Carlos, before I got home. The sight of it made my blood boil. "Bonnie!" I screamed, my voice cracking with the weight of everything. "Get out!" She didn't turn around, just kept scrubbing the dishes, methodical, deliberate. The sound of running water was the only thing breaking the silence between us. In a fit of desperation, I said the first thing that came to my mind. "I slept with Sally. Twice." It wasn't true, but I didn't know what else to say. I wanted to hurt her, to make her feel the same pain she had inflicted on me. Bonnie didn't even flinch. She finished washing a plate, placed it on the drying rack, and turned to face me, a smirk tugging at the corners of her lips. "Oh, Paul," she said, almost pitying me. "I know you're lying. I always know when you're lying." I felt like I had been punched again. She stood there, looking at me like I was the one who had failed, like she had won. And maybe she had. I had never seen that look in her eyes before. Cold, victorious, like she had been waiting for this moment. I didn't know what to say. I was completely defeated, standing in my own home, feeling like a stranger. She knew everything about me, how I think, how I react. And now, she had twisted that knowledge into a weapon, one I wasn't prepared to face. Bonnie wiped her hands on a dish towel, still wearing that same smug expression. "I told you, Paul. He's just better. That's all." She walked out of the kitchen, leaving me standing there, empty, broken. A couple of days later, Bonnie finally moved out, probably to her new perfect boyfriend, Carlos. Not only did I lose my wife, the woman I thought I'd spend my life with, but I also lost my best friend. Carlos, who'd been there for me through so much, was now gone too. The betrayal cut deep, and with both of them gone, my world felt hollow. I filed for divorce almost immediately. I didn't want to drag things out. I threw myself into work to drown out the pain, working longer hours, taking on every project that came my way. But no matter how much I worked, how exhausted I was, the nights were the worst. Lying in bed, I'd stare at the ceiling, trying not to think about Bonnie or Carlos. Some nights I'd cry. I wasn't proud of it, but I couldn't help it. I loved her despite everything. That love didn't just vanish overnight. About 2 months passed, and out of the blue, I got a message from Carlos. Just one word, "Sorry." That was it. No explanation, no long apology. Just, "Sorry." I didn't reply. What was there to say? A few days later, I found out through mutual acquaintances that Bonnie and Carlos had broken up. She'd moved back in with her mother. Part of me wasn't surprised, but there was still a small part that needed to know why. What could have possibly caused them to break up? One evening after work, I stopped by the local bar, like I had been doing almost every night since it all happened. It had become a routine. Go to work, stop by the bar, drink until the edges of my thoughts blurred, then stumble home. As I stood outside, breathing in the cool night air after a few drinks, I saw him, Carlos. He looked different, worn out, like he hadn't slept well in weeks. He spotted me and hesitated, like he wasn't sure if he should approach or just turn and walk the other way. But after a moment, he walked over. "Paul, man, I'm sorry," he mumbled, avoiding my eyes. I was already a little drunk, so instead of telling him to get lost, I shrugged. "Want a drink?" I asked, not really expecting him to say yes. But he did. We went back into the bar and ordered another round. It was awkward at first. Neither of us really knew what to say. But after a couple of drinks, Carlos started talking. He apologized for ruining our friendship, for betraying me like that. I just listened. There wasn't anything I could say that would change what had happened. Then he said something that made me pause. "You know, man," he said, swirling the last sip of his whiskey, "I still don't understand how you didn't pick up on it. The hair bows, the fake nails. Bonnie never did that stuff before. I mean, you know what kind of girls I'm into. Your wife literally became that." I took a long sip of my drink, not sure what to feel. Anger? Regret? Maybe both. But I didn't say anything. He continued, and this time, I could hear the frustration in his voice. "And you know why we broke up?" he asked bitterly. "It's because of that damn habit of hers. She used to kiss me every morning before she went to work. Every single morning. I hate being woken up like that. She never stopped, even when I asked her to. It drove me crazy." Carlos' words hit me like a punch to the gut. That little habit. Bonnie kissing him before she left for work. That was the very thing I used to love. It was how I knew she cared. That small gesture that always made my day start off right. But with Carlos, it had the opposite effect. It annoyed him. He hated it. That's when it hit me how much had changed. How much I had changed. That habit I once loved now felt like a distant memory. Something that belonged to a different time, a different person. I finished my drink and looked at Carlos, who was still rambling about Bonnie, about the things that bothered him. But I wasn't really listening anymore. I was thinking about that kiss, that small, sweet gesture that had once meant everything to me. Liked, that's the word that stuck with me. I liked it, past tense. Now, it was just something Bonnie used to do. And I realized then that it wasn't just Bonnie who was in my past now. She was never coming back.